Hong Kong's confrontation with the problem of its aging population is intensifying as the city draws closer to parity between the number of workers and the number of people who are either too old or too young to work, says Professor Francis Lui. Life expectancy in the city is among the highest in the world, the fertility rate among the lowest in the world, and well below replacement level. Within the next decade, this disparity will begin to affect the GDP. One of the most viable solutions, says Lui, who heads the Department of Economics at the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology School of Business and Management, is to attract high-level talents from the mainland.
We should expect that Hong Kong people will continue to live longer, and even in the future it will be even much longer than today. Okay, so the only thing that we can do should include two parts. The first is whether the fertility rate of the Hong Kong people could go up, and the other is whether we can import some productive immigrants, young immigrants into Hong Kong. Okay. According to to my calculation using the 2011 census data, about 38% of the women in Hong Kong between the age of 40 and 44 do not have any children. We're talking about 38%, okay? So a lot of the younger people in Hong Kong actually, would not like to have any children at all. So how can the government induce them or encourage them to have more children? And you have to understand that in Hong Kong, housing is very crowded, and then educational costs could be very high, and the mother may have to consider quitting the job.
By 2018, Hong Kong's workforce will start to enter a contraction, with the numbers of people actually on the job entering a slow decline. Within 30 years, every working person will be supporting, on average, 0.8 people who are not members of their immediate families, who are either too old to work or underage.
Hong Kong does have a very serious problem for the aging of the population. On the one hand, Hong Kong has among the highest life expectancy in the world, and Hong Kong has also among the lowest total fertility rates in the world. 10 years from now or 15 years from now, the problem could be very serious. In other words, by this time, the proportion of people who are older than 65 or so will be very large. And then the proportion of people who are at the working age will be relatively small. In other words, we will be seeing some kind of inverted pyramid for the population structure. And then when this happens, there could be many undesirable consequences. The first thing that we have to deal with is that the people who are about to retire may not have enough money to protect their livelihood during this long phase of retirement. And another issue is that the government's own estimation is that by the year 2018 or so, the absolute number of people in the working force will actually begin to decline. In any case, the government is quite worried that because of the contraction of the employment in the future, the GDP in Hong Kong will also suffer somewhat. And we have to understand that many of these people at the working age actually do not work. My estimation is that by that time, that is 30 years later, for every person who actually works, he or she has to support 0.8 persons who are over 65.
Lui calls on the government to take more decisive action to address the aging population. It's more important, however, to focus on the quality of people who are better trained and educated, rather than to worry about the quantity, he said.
This problem can be partially alleviated by making sure that the quality of the people or the productivity of the people will go up somewhat. But this would require some appropriate investment in education, in training, and in accumulating working experiences and so on. Even if we do not pay any of this universal pension welfare scheme at all. Okay, so now the financial feasibility is just not there, and the reason is very simple. We will have a lot of old people around in the future, but very few young people. So any kind of intergenerational transfers would encounter a lot of difficulties. Therefore, the more appropriate approach is to use, savings. People of this generation will prepare for the retirement for themselves. Okay. In other words, when they are still young, they try to save the money, they try to invest. They do not rely on the next generation, because in the next generation there won't be that many people.